Hey YouTube, in today's video we'll be going into making Instagrammable art in Blender 2.9. I'll be using some free add-ons including the ANT Landscape add-on and the Blender Kit add-on, which are all available in Blender itself. I hope you learned something, and if you do, then please leave a like, subscribe and click on the bell icon for further notifications. If you decide to make this yourself, please feel free to share with me on Instagram. It's great to see what you guys make. And I hope I can show you it's not that hard to make Instagrammable art. And don't forget, if you want to buy these files, you can buy them for $2 on my Gumroad. The link is in the description down below. It can save you some time, and you can see how I've set my scene up completely. So now let's get into it.
Okay, so we are back in a fresh Blender scene. First of all, we want to clear this up, so we're going to hit A and X to delete everything. And now to start off, we are going to work on our world here. So we've got the sky texture going on. So let's go to sky texture here. It's set to Nishita by default. So nothing to change there. But if you go into render view now, you can tell it's not working. That's because we are still in Eevee. So let's change the render engine to cycles here and change the device to GPU compute. And I want to turn some things on. These are all optimized for my computer, but please feel free to optimize them for yours. And now let's change some of the parameters of the sky texture here. So we're going to leave the sun size and sun intensity as is. We can change the sun rotation to 110. And we want to add in some air here. So change that to 1.5. I want a 2 for the dust here and 5 for the ozone. All right, so let's add in our first object here. I'm going to add in a cylinder. Let's just change back to solid view here. And I'm going to change the vertices to 3, effectively giving us a triangle. And now I want to rotate this, so press numpad 1 to go into front view, and then rotate this with RX90 to face it towards us. Okay, that's that. And now I want to scale it up by a factor of 6, making it big. And let's go into the edit mode here and select the front and back face and hit X to delete these. Choose faces, of course. And now we have the basic setup for the hall there. Now let's select the top edge and into front view again, numpad 1, and then hit Control B to bevel this edge and then pull it down, only giving it 1 cut. All right, so with that done, I'm going into top view with numpad 7. I'm going to hit Control R to add in some loop cuts. I'm going to add in 5. And I want to add in a modifier, in this case, a solidify modifier. And let's change some parameters here. I'm going to change it to a thickness of 0.1, not that too much, 0.05, making sure that even thickness is turned on. Now this is looking good, and I want to apply this. So I'm tapping out of edit mode now and hit Control A while hovering over the modifier. And this applied the modifier to our object. And now with face select, I'm going to delete some of these faces, creating the basic look for our hallway here. So selecting a few here, alternating. I'm selecting them by random. And I want to make sure I select the faces on both sides of the object, so inside and out. And that's the wrong one. All right, and now I can delete all of these. Yeah, I've got them all now. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete these. Hit X again and choose faces. And now we want to close off all of these gaps that we just created. I'm going to select some edges here and then hit F to create a face. And I'm going to speed this up or maybe skip it in the tutorial. You don't need to see all of it, but just make sure you close all of these. And now you can see we are done here. And it's all closed off. It's looking good. And I want to go into UV editing here, and I want to unwrap this model. And unwrapping is basically look at your object like it's a piece of origami, and you need to fold it back out so it's flat. And the easiest way to do that is to look for easy seams which are not visible to our eyes. So on the bottom, for example, here we've got a good seam. So select the edge there, then hit Control E and choose Mark Seam. Like that, it will turn up red, showing you that it's now a seam. And you don't want any stretching on your seam, so really think of it like a piece of paper. Um, Try to think of it as a 3D object unfolded into a flat one. First of all, the first time you're doing it, it won't be so easy, but eventually you'll get used to this method, and it'll become better. Usually, these kinds of crevices over here are good places to mark as a seam. I'm selecting all of these here. You can just follow my lead in this case. Mark as seam, Control E, and mark all the edges there because I want to separate those side pieces. So Control E again. And I'm going to hit U and unwrap the object. Show me what I've got so far. And as I can tell, it's starting to look pretty good, but there are still some pieces going very wrong over there. That's because we're not completely done with unwrapping yet. All right. So just keep on working on this and updating it. So every once in a while, tap A to select all of the vertices or faces, and then hit U and choose unwrap. And now I want to unwrap these side parts here, and I want to choose the outermost edges because those won't show up in the renders clearly. So if we use those, we can hide the seams there as well, making our object look better. We can completely unwrap the top part there. And we can also do the same for the bottom side. And I just want to deselect a few of these edges and clear the seams because I need those to stick to the top part there. I'm selecting all of these, then hit Control E again and choose clear seam in this case. And this is looking about how I want it to. That one can go away as well. I want to add these two though. And that one, that one, that one as well. These. Clear this one. And this should be the last few here. All right. So I think we're done now. Let's hit unwrap again. And now it looks pretty good. You can see we have got all these non-stretched, pretty uniform UVs on the left side here. Okay, so now let's add in a material here so we can see if our UVs are correct. So I'm adding a new material. I'm calling it concrete. And I've got the principled BSDF here. And if you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, yep, that one, you can click on the principled BSDF and then hit Control-Shift-T to get the principled texture set up. And then choose your material. I will put the link in the description of the video. But basically, I use the concrete material, which is freely available on this awesome website called texturehaven.com. You can download it here in any kind of size you want. And this now works properly. It's got the right setup automatically. And I'm going back into the UV editing workspace here. And now I can select some of these UV islands here by hovering over them and pressing L. And if I move them around on the right side, you can see the UVs are moving and the material is changing. And I'm going to change some of these islands. I'm going to rotate the bottom there, for example. Rotate it by 90 degrees and then scale it up a bunch because I want some of these concrete lines in there. Doesn't really matter if they overlap because they will still use the same material. Doesn't really matter. Now this is the bottom. You can't even see it. So I'm just going to move it out of the way there. This should be the top here. We can move that away as well. This should be the part we can actually see on the top. Let's scale this one up. Something like this will do. And let's move it a bit as well, giving us a part of the material that we are looking for. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Oh, by the way, if your UVs are not showing up, make sure you have the object selected on the right side here. And I want to work on the side areas there, and I want to give them the lines as well, all uniform and going in the same direction here. So I can select one with L again, then move it around. Just gonna move it out here. I'm gonna scale it up again as well, giving us a bit more texture there. And this is looking pretty good. I'm actually quite happy with that one. So let's base the other ones off of that one. I'm selecting one here. It's not the one on the right side. I want the one on the right side. It's also not the one. So which one is it? It should be this one. Yeah, okay. So let's scale that up as well. Just eyeballing it in this case. Of course, you can do this more precise, remember your measurements or something like that. But for me, eyeballing worked fine in this case. So select another one here. These three are the ones we need to change. I'm just going to scale them up all at once. You can select them with L and holding shift to select multiple islands at once. And now let's just move them around a bit, making sure the lines sort of match up and they all have the same size. Click L again to choose the island there and move it around. Cool. All right. So that's all the UV editing we need to do. And we've got our material all set up now. If we go into render view now, you can see everything's working. Displacement is working. The bump is working. So I'm going to rename my object here to hall. I'm going to add it to its own collection. So hit M, choose new collection and give it a name. Now let's go into top view here with numpad 7. I'm going to switch to material here. And I want to start duplicating this. So I'm going to add in a new collection instance with Shift A and choose the hall collection instance. And I'm going to move this one up. So G, Y, and hold Control to make it snap to the grid. So link it to the first one there. And now let's rotate it. So hit R and then 180 to rotate it 180 degrees. So we got all these shapes alternating there. Now let's duplicate this one again, holding Control G, Y to move it, R 180. And let's do that one more time. So G, Y, R 180. And this should give us the longer hallway. Super easy. To work on the dunes on the side, we need to make sure we have the ANT landscape add-on enabled. So make sure you have that. And if you do, we can now go Shift A and add in a landscape here. This will prompt a new menu. And in the operator presets up top, we can choose dunes. And we can leave everything default. That's fine. We'll be creating several types. Okay, so now let's scale this dune up. So hit S and then type in 18. We need a pretty big one here. Okay, so let's move it down a bit first. So going to front view with numpad 1 and G, Z, and hold shift to move it quite precisely. Something like this. Yep, that's fine. Now let's go into top view with numpad 7 and let's move it to the side here. So GX and then move it to the side. Hold shift to make it more precise. And I'm going to move it back up a bit because I want some of the sand to creep through there to the sides of the hallway. So something like this will do fine. Cool. All right, so let's add in another dune here. So operator presets, choose dunes, and then let's go into the random seed here and then choose another number. Just make sure it's not the same one you used before. You scale it up again as 18. So this is a different dune now. And let's move it to the other side here. So I'm going to use GX. Something like this. Go into front view as well. Move it down. I'm going to pull it maybe in ever so slightly. Make sure more sand creeps through there. And I want to put both of these in their own collection. So I'm selecting both of these and then hit M. And let's call it dunes. Hit OK. And that added the new collection with the objects there. Now I'm going to add in a new collection instance, in this case, the dunes one. I'm going to link those up top there, holding G, Y, and Control. And I'm going to rotate it R180. So now we have the dunes alternating there. And you won't be able to tell that in the render that these are all the same dunes actually. All right, cool. Let's add in one more dune. Don't add it to the collection instance though. Give it its own random seed. Scale it up by a factor of 18 again. And let's move it all the way to the back. So G, Y. And let's move it down. G, Z, and hold Shift to move it precisely. Move it up ever so slight, maybe pull it in a bit, making sure the sand overlaps there as well. Cool. Now we want to give the dunes their own material as well. And to do that, we'll be using this super awesome add-on called Blender Kit. So let's go into preferences again and then look up Blender Kit here and make sure it's enabled. And this will prompt the menu up top here. And in here, you can look up materials or models. Make sure the eye is open so you can actually see what you're looking up. Let's type in something like dunes here. This will give me this awesome desert sand here. And now it's super easy. I can just select it and then drag and drop it. And it will automatically get applied to the object here. How cool is that? Super easy. Let's do it on the back as well. And that's all we need to do for the dunes. Now let's add in a camera here. So go into front view with numpad 1, hit Shift A and choose camera. And now on the first keyframe of our animation, we want to pull the camera back. So with the camera selected, hit G, Y, and hold Shift. And I'm going to change the focal length to something like 30 and pull it in a bit as well, giving me the starting point that I was looking for. I'm going to hit I to create a keyframe here. So with the camera still selected, hit I and choose location. I'm going to move all the way to the back. In my case, I want the animation to be 150 frames. So let's change the length there. And I'm going to pull it backwards to something where I want to end the animation. Not all the way to the back, but almost. Something like this. And then hit I again and choose location keyframe. Now make sure you select both of these keyframes and then hit T while on the timeline and choose the interpolation type linear, making our camera motion constant instead of speeding up and slowing down. Okay, and that's all we're doing for the animation. So next up, I want to add in the cloud that you saw in the render. And I have this object here, which I created based on a tutorial. So I'm going to append the material only in this case. And I'm going to add in a cube and apply the material. So if you go to your material library there, then choose the cloud material. It automatically got added from the append there. And this will generate a cloud. This is based off the CG Matter or default cube tutorial. So feel free to look at it. I'm not going to explain all of it. I'm just going to pull it in a bit there. Now, because he already did it and he explains it way better than I ever could, please watch his tutorial on creating the cloud if you want to. I'm just going to show you the nodes real quick. So pause the video if you need to see what was done here. Although I recommend watching the tutorial by CG Matter. It's way better and explains really anything you want to know about this subject. All right. Now, only thing I want to change is the color here. So I'm going to change the color to a fairly saturated pink. Something like this. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this color. Nice contrast there. And now I'm going back into solid view here. So my computer is more responsive. And I'm changing the cube here and going to viewport display in the object settings and changing it to wire. So I can actually see the hallway still. Now I add in a point light here. I'm going to move this one into the cloud. So GUI, hold shift, make sure it's inside of the cube object you just added. So put it somewhere over here, and the height should be fine by default. Make sure to parent the cloud and light to the camera. So select all of them and hit Control P and choose object. Now I gave the light a power of 250 watts and gave it a warm color. So make sure to do that as well. And now I've parented everything to the camera, so the animation of the camera automatically gets copied to the cloud and the light. Now I want the cloud to animate while we're moving. So to do that, I'm going into the material here, into the noise texture. And there's this W value, and I want to animate that one because it will generate a random cloud every time we change it. So let's add a timeline window here. And on the W, on the first keyframe, hit I. Now let's go to the last keyframe here. Change the value to 1. Hit I again. And in the timeline, I want to select all of the keyframes and choose the interpolation type with T and choose linear. So everything is constant. Now, for the render specifications, I want to set everything up right. I have the adaptive sampling. I have the performance set to a tile size of 256, which is best for my computer. And I want to change the color management to make sure it's set to medium high contrast here. Now for the render properties, I'm going for full HD. And 1 to 150 frames. Frame rate, I want to set it to 30. And of course, choose a proper save location. You can export it as an FFmpeg video. But in my case, I exported it as a PNG sequence because I wanted to pause it in between rendering. It took quite some time. If you do choose FFmpeg video, then make sure to go into the encoding tab here and then change it to MP4 and change the output quality to perceptually lossless. And now I want to go into compositing. So I'm going to render out a single frame so we can do some simple compositing up next. But first of all, I want to go to the view layers here and make sure that denoising data is enabled. So I can use that to denoise my image. Okay, so let's render it out. All right, so this is the render of one single frame. It took about 8.5 minutes. Of course, if you've got a better PC than me, then this should take significantly less time. But anyways, into compositing. So let's close this off and let's go into the compositing tab here and make sure that use nodes is enabled. And I want to add in a viewer node here with Shift A. So Shift A and type in viewer. Let's plug in the image as well. Now let's right click and drag with Shift over the line to combine those. Let's move this out of the way. You can zoom in or out with V and Alt V. So I zoomed out with V here. And now I want to add in a denoiser. So I'm going to search up a denoise node and then add it in there. This will denoise my image, but usually it's too much for me because I like a bit of grain to give some realism to everything. So I'm going to add in the noisy image, which should be one of the view layers that you added with the denoising data there. I'm going to add in a mix node here. So Shift A and look up a mix node. I'm going to plug in the noisy image up top there. I'm going to leave the blend modes on mix there. I'm going to change the factor. Let's zoom in a bit. This is especially important for the cloud. And something like a, well, maybe a 0.6, 0.5. No, that's too little. 0.6. Yeah, 0.6 will do for me. Just a bit of grain to add some realism there. I like that. Okay, now I want to add in a glare node. And let's put it on the back there. Let's zoom in a bit just with the scroll wheel. And let's change the type from streaks to fog glow. And this should take a minute. And now it's a bit too intense. I'm gonna decrease the size there to 6. And this should light up our lighter parts, but leave the darker parts alone, giving us some nice bloom effect for added realism. Yeah, and this is all the compositing I wanted to do. So let's go back in here and make sure everything is set up properly. And now we can render our image. So I hope I showed you guys that making Instagrammable art is not that hard. If you learned something, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot. And if you decide to make this yourself, please share with me on Instagram. It's really great to see the work that you guys make. See you in the next one.